Hey, everybody, welcome to the Addiction Unlimited podcast, where you get to learn everything you want to know about addiction and recovery. I'm your host, Angela Pugh, co-founder of Kansas City Recovery, life coach, and recovering alcoholic. To learn more about me, you can listen to episode 0 on your podcast app or find us on the web at addictionunlimited.com. Hello, my friend. Welcome back to Addiction Unlimited podcast. I'm your coach, Angela Pugh. And today's episode is a little different because I'm joined by one of my longtime clients and now fantastic friends who is officially 5 years sober. And I really wanted to have this conversation because I think her story is the story so many people are living right now. Not dramatic rock bottom, not losing everything, not waking up one day, suddenly 100% certain she had to quit forever, but years of negotiating, trying to moderate, trying to prove to herself that she could still have a normal relationship with alcohol, making rules, breaking rules, starting over, counting days, doing mental gymnastics all day long, trying to figure out the big question. Do I really have a problem? Do I really need to quit? Maybe I can still make this work. And I think one of the most exhausting parts of drinking is not even the drinking itself. It's the obsession. It's the constant debate, the bargaining, monitoring, promises, shame, all that mental energy that alcohol takes from your life long before you ever stop drinking. And the truth is, long-term sobriety is not built on willpower. Willpower runs out. What actually keeps you sober is what you build underneath the decision: support, structure, honesty, connection, learning how to handle life differently. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today. So whether you are still trying to moderate, whether you are newly sober, or you're somewhere in the messy middle wondering if this is ever going to feel normal, I think this conversation is really going to hit home for you. So let's get into it and welcome Denise to the show. Hello, my love. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a long time coming, I guess.
I know. I feel like we've been talking about recording for 100 years and we're just finally getting around to it.
You know, we like to procrastinate.
Well, I think we talked about recording in person I think the thought process for me at least was we were going to record when you were in Kansas City in August or September. And then we just couldn't. It was too busy. We had too many people. We were having too much fun. There was just no way to make that magic happen. So here we are. I'm so glad you're here. And I'm really excited to talk about this because I feel like so many people schedule like consultation calls with me, and everybody always thinks like they're the only one, right? They think like they're the only high functioning person, and they think that their story is so different from anybody else's because they don't have that major rock bottom moment. And I just said this to a lady on a consultation call yesterday. I was like, 99% of my clients don't have a tragic rock bottom moment. I said, you are in exactly the right place because that is a much more common story now. So I'm curious with you, like, when did you first start wondering if your relationship with alcohol might not be healthy?
I'll bring it back to the kids in the 80s, 1980s. I think in Marie Claire or one of those magazines, there was questions, right? You could fill out the quiz. And one of them was that quiz. And I would say I would fill that out and determine through that questioning that I didn't have an issue. Then I was in a psych class in college and we read I'm Dancing as Fast as I Can, which is a young lady who gets involved in addiction. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And then it cooled its jets, and I was in my 20s, and I had a fabulous time in my 20s, and I survived it, and I didn't have any major issues. I did get pulled over on my way back from a bar, My mom came and picked me up, and the cop was like, "Oh, you're a teacher, you can go." And I went back to my house, but we definitely enjoyed ourselves. And I would say in my 30s is when I really started it amped up. This wasn't a weekend thing anymore. This is now happening all week long. I deserve it. And it just, that progression that everybody talks about, I'm now living it. And now your health and your lifestyle starts to get affected. So it's not just a weekend party, where I'm down at the beach and we're having fun and, kegs and bars and booze and music. It's now, wow, I want to come home and do this. And I thought I was making an active choice. And I stood by that for a pretty long time, that I'm an adult and I get to do this and I'm choosing to do it. And I deserve it after I worked hard at the end of the day.
Mm-hmm. Did you immediately know that you were going to have to quit completely? Did you have that thought?
No. I started with a 60-day dry. It was 1 year, no beer. And I did 60 days and I did it on purpose in July and August because that's the summer. And I live at the Jersey Shore. So if I could quit over the summer, I definitely didn't have a problem. And that all came to a close at the end of the summer when I went to a Zac Brown show. And there was no way I was going out to that show. And I hopped right back on the drinking horse and took off from there. And I believe that was the summer of 2019. And, you can do the math. My sober date is March 1st, 2021. So I just want to be clear. Everybody thinks that maybe you wake up and it happens. That is somebody, that's your story. You had a moment. It happened. It just wasn't for me. It took a lot of time and practice. It took practice not drinking. It took, the experience of going back and forth. And there was a lot of time in between the summer of 2019 and when this actually happened.
What were some of the things you tried? Did you do making all the rules for yourself to try controlling it?
Yes. So I was only going to drink on weekends. I was going to have happy hour on Fridays, enjoy myself on Saturdays, and Sundays I should clean up, and then I would be all set for work. And then, Sunday fun day, football Sunday. So now it's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then it's like, well, I had a tough day on Monday. It just grew. It grew from only on weekends, only when I go out to dinner with my friends. I'm not going to drink at home. You make up all these rules. For me, it really had a lot to do with the weekend. Mm-hmm. That was my time off from work. And then it just grew into the work week.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of people listening can probably relate to that. I know I took a break for 30 days. That was my first thing. And my thought process was I was trying to prove to myself that I didn't have to drink every day. I think somewhere in the back of my head, I knew the answer was I was going to have to quit forever. I think I really did know that. I just was nowhere near being able to commit at that level. So I quit for 30 days and I was like, I just have to prove to myself that I don't have to drink every day. And that will give me a new lease on life, right? So I go my 30 days. It was pretty easy. It didn't bother me. Now I understand after 20 years of sobriety and doing this work that almost all of us can quit for short periods of time, either to prove it to ourselves or to prove it to other people, right? We can quit pretty easily for a period of time, especially if it's going to piss people off, because we tend to love that. But I know when I went back to drinking after 30 days and I was celebratory, right? I went 30 days. I don't have to drink every day. I was so relieved. I was like, I can just drink on special occasions. Well, unfortunately, everything felt like a special occasion. It was like, just like you're saying, then all of a sudden it's like, well, I had a hard day. I deserve to drink today. That's a special occasion. And then it's the weekend or it's a baseball game for me. I'm not football and baseball. It's a baseball game, whatever. Like there was always a rationalization to drink.
And the planning. So when you start to give yourself rules, you are going to plan for that day, all the other days of your week, whatever rule you have set. So if your weekend starting Monday, you'd be like, okay, we get to have a drink on a Friday. We're going to happy hour on Friday. So now I'm exerting all this mental energy at this point for the special Friday, Saturday, and eventually Sunday. That's a lot of time and energy.
Yes, because listen, I got to think about what I'm going to wear, like where I'm going, who I'm inviting. Like this is not a part-time job being a drunk. This is a full-time situation. Mm-hmm. It requires all of your attention. I just want to point out, so does your recovery. It requires your full attention. So tell us a little bit about, I know one of the things you did, this is one of my favorite things to talk about, is tracking your days on a calendar. So how did you get into that? Like what made you think to start doing that? Where was that in your journey?
I think it's very teacher-like.
I didn't even think of that. Yeah, that makes perfect sense.
I wanted to cross off days that I did not drink. So I created like a positive calendar so I could see the X's. So I went to Target and I bought one of those monthly calendars and I would just X off. And my original goal was if I was drinking every day of the year, I wanted to drink half as much. So it didn't matter. Like I would keep track, yes, but my first goal was to drink half as much. So I made a concerted effort to back off. Then I had better months than other months, Mm-hmm. It's just the way it worked. And then eventually, I joined another 30-day group eventually in 2020, or I did it twice. Cause and it's like I needed that group to help out, but,
What did you notice, like once you started tracking your days, what were some of like the realizations that you had either about your drinking or about your feelings about drinking? Like what were some of the discoveries in that process?
You really got a chance to see how much. Mm-hmm. It was no longer a secret. Like you kind of knew, but until you start tracking, you don't know. Kind of like I track days or, I'm actually keeping data. That's it. I'm keeping data, right? What is the data on this? What am I actually doing in a month? Like, what does this look like? I think for me, it was like really getting a really good look on visual. I still have visual reminders at work. I keep a paper calendar. I keep an Apple calendar. But I'm very visual. So for me, it was like, I really wanted to see like, what did this look like? I still have them and I'll flip through those calendars and it's like, it's interesting. It brings me back to that year or, however many months that was. But, for me, I needed to see it visually. Could I have said, gee, Denise, when you're making your own runs to the recycling center with hidden handles of vodka, like, that obviously is a red flag. But for me, like I just needed to track it and I like to see progress. And I started to add up like the days and the months. And then I would have a little pen and a ruler and I would X them out. Like the whole thing for me was just how can we spin this in a positive way, yet keep track of what's happening here?
Yeah, that's interesting. I feel like you have so many of those realizations like after you quit too. But it is like hard evidence, like we say this all the time in recovery, like what does the evidence tell you? And that's a really good way to just have very clear data on what is actually happening. I remember feeling that about how much money I spent drinking. I really had no idea how much money I spent until I quit. And, because your brain plays tricks on you because it wants to rationalize and justify. So your brain will tell you whatever story it needs to tell you to get you to do what it wants you to do, So I would always downplay like, oh, well, I'm not spending that much because I'm a bartender and all the other bartenders know me. So I'm getting free drinks and discounts and whatever. And most of the nights I'm working anyway, so I'm not spending a lot then. But then I got sober and I looked at my bank account and I was like, damn, dude, I am rich. Like, where did this money go? Like, I was shocked at the amount of money I was spending just on drinking. So it's good to have those data points.
Yes. And I would say I love the idea that you talk about rationalization because I think that we're all fabulous at it.
Oh, gosh, yes.
I felt that I didn't buy fancy purses and shoes because I'm a flip-flops beach gal. I was like, well, that's my fun.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not out. I don't have a fancy car. I don't have fancy shoes. I don't have the fancy purse. I don't buy, things that materialistic things is not always my thing. But it kind of was a justification. I want to go out with my friends. That's what I do. And I'm an adult and I can. That's my favorite.
And you're not the boss of me, so I can do whatever I want.
Yes, exactly.
So what made you finally decide to quit completely?
The darkest moments were probably waking up at 3:30. And I had this like ball of indigestion. I didn't always drink wine, but when I drank red wine or I ran out of whatever and I switched over to wine, that was a rough night. Those were rough nights. When you wake up at 3:30 and you just have this burning and whatever else, and you go to the bathroom and you expel it. And it looks amazing at 3:30 in the morning, but I could go back to bed and go to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
That got bad. My cheeks were bright red. I used to keep Tums in my desk at work. I know for a fact I rolled into a couple jobs and Jameson was literally oozing out of my pores. I mean, I think I had a colleague at one time was like, you legit smell like a liquor cabinet. I was like, so it just your relationships. I didn't realize how short-tempered I was and unapproachable, and just people just didn't know what they were going to get. And that's my biggest, I don't know, I feel the worst about those colleagues. And I did give an amends to them because I felt like I was just such a crappy employee and colleague, actually, is really the word. They deserve better. I mean, I always care about kids and taking care of my job and get my stuff done, but I could have been a much better person. I just was like a mess. And then my stomach would be a mess. Just the pain. Like I used to feel like my intestines were on fire. Mm-hmm. It was such a weird feeling, and thank God I don't get that anymore. But it literally felt like I wish I could rip my insides out because they were on fire. And my best guess is that that's all inflammation. Mm-hmm. So it was just miserable. It was just, you're kind of like sweaty and you don't feel great. I mean, it's just, and then I'm waking up in the morning. I'm literally having conversations with myself in the mirror. I'm calling myself in third person. I'm like, Denise, what are we doing here? Like, we can't keep doing this. Like, why, you need to stop. And I'm having this conversation with myself in my bathroom mirror. Some other crazy stuff happened. I ended up, backing into a car that I ended up leaving that scene. I did some questionable things. I was out on the road when I shouldn't have been. Nobody could take my keys from me. Like, forget it. It just the whole thing was just a hot mess, and I didn't realize how bad it was because I woke up, I went to work, I did my job, and I got a paycheck. That's what we're supposed to do, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I checked all the boxes for being an adult.
So when you decided to quit, how did you feel? Like, did you have any relief, or was it just like terrified? Like, where was your head?
It was an odd time. Schools ended up getting closed somewhere around 2020. and we all went home during this for me. So there was a period of time where I got really like into podcasts and stuff. And you just start to hear more, and you're like, you get more accepting, I guess. You get much more accepting of like, we have to do something. And that's when I started, like, I'm a book person. So now I start with the books. I got the 1 Year No Beer. I did Alan Carr's The Easy Way to Quit Drinking. I was reading like We Are the Luckiest. And then, I'm listening to other podcasts. And, you just accept. It's like, I have to do something about this. I don't know. It just was like, I can't continue to live this lifestyle. This is going to end me. This is horrific. I have to quit. I don't know how. Where do I go for this? And, I had some pretty strict rules about how I was going to do it. And you know that.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit. What were some of your rules about how you were going to do it?
I was going to do it my way.
That is your favorite way.
It is. I thought
whether it's effective or not, it is your favorite way.
I'm very willful, I've been told, and it even confirmed it on one of those personality tests.
Imagine that.
Imagine that. So I get all the books, and I listen to the podcasts, and I do another 30-day. And I realize it forces you into groups. So I was in like a group of 10 women, and we're all going to quit for 30 days. And I was part of the whatever group, February or something. And it was beneficial to be in a group, which is probably the last thing. Actually, it's not probably. It was the last thing that I wanted to do for this, because I could do it all. I had gotten this far. And that's also something in my brain too, right? I got 30 days. I got 60 days. I can do this. So I came out of that 30-day program, and I white-knuckled it for 3 months. And I finally conceded to the fact that I needed to be connected. And I had heard you on somebody else's podcast, and I was like, whoa, who's this chick? And I'm from Jersey, so you spoke my language. And I found out that you had a program, and I felt at the time, what I really needed to do. And I joined Sober Society, and I immediately joined VIP at the time. And it was so important because I showed up to every single one of those meetings with questions for you. And I'll never forget it. I didn't sit quiet. I didn't have my camera off. I had questions. You were the expert, and VIP was my access to you. Right. Now, I do love all the people that were there, but truly I cared less about them I had my questions.
Right.
I showed up and I had my questions. And I think I just wanted to gather information from you. I consider you a source.
Yeah.
So I try to find good sources of information. And you were providing good source of information that actually worked, and it helped. And you just had, you really do. You just have a great way of explaining things. And I just love, you're straightforward to a point. You never made me cry. But I did have to hear the things that I needed to hear.
Yeah, we all do. There are parts of this that aren't easy, and it's one of the reasons, like, I always stress the importance of getting out of your comfort zone. Like, everything I did needed to be uncomfortable. And I was very clear about that because my comfort zone was drunk. So when somebody was pointing out things about me or my behavior or my responses, and it made me uncomfortable, that's when I knew that was exactly what I needed to hear, right? So it was like, just shut up, Angela. Like, you're uncomfortable because they're telling you the truth, period. Like, you can't be comfortable right now. Comfortable's drunk. Sorry, it's over. But it is like, we're the worst judge of our own behaviors and actions and reactions and all of those things. You do have to have somebody, one, that you're willing to receive the message from, right? Because it has to be somebody that you respect and that you believe they know what they're talking about, right? It was the same way for me with my sponsor. Like, I knew he was my person. There's no question. And, we laugh a lot when I talk about some of the things that he said to me and how he sponsored me. And it was just a dream come true for me. I like somebody to be a little hard on me anyway. I thrive in that. And I know he's not for the faint of heart, but he also, at the same time being tough, he at the same time was so loving and kind and accepting. And I think I learned a lot about my approach in coaching from him, that you do have to be honest and you do have to tell people things they don't want to hear sometimes, but you do also do it with love and kindness and respect and all of those things. And that's how we learn, right? That's how we get better.
I think recovery, when you're really in tune with the whole process and, we get what we need. And I found an amazing sponsor down in South Carolina, and she was perfect for me. Mm-hmm. I would have probably crumbled a bit under Kevin. I just have so much self-worth and self-esteem. Like, I think it was really hard for me to take certain criticisms because I'm already hard enough on myself, right? I've already beat myself up. Like, if I have to give myself a report card, it's a C+, B-, because I always have things that I shoulda, woulda, coulda. But she was beautiful. She held my hand through the whole thing. It was, I love her. I still call her. And I'll be down in South Carolina for her to celebrate her 40th. But we get what we need, and it's important, and it's important to hear those things because, I hit not too long after that, I hit what I call my emotional rock bottom. I had polished off, I think, 2 bags of miniature candies that were left over from Halloween, and we were on a call in November, and I'm crying, which isn't often, and you pull out the big book and read a passage. And I said, I'm going this Saturday to a speaker meeting. And I went. And that was how many months, into this journey. I'm sober March. This is now November of the next, I call them school years, right? The next school year. So, it takes me a while to get there because I will always start with willpower. Mm-hmm. Always.
Yeah. 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 Well, it's challenging. People always ask me, are you going to make me go to AA? And I'm like, no, I don't care if you go to AA. You can find your own way. This world is not about like AA is the only program. You can get help and you can get sober and be successful anywhere you go. It is your choice. Programs don't work or not work. We as people work or don't work. So you can go to any program anywhere at any time and be successful if you choose to be successful. What surprised you in early sobriety? Like, what were some things that maybe you didn't expect or that felt different than you thought they would or whatever?
I didn't realize that I could curtail a lot of cravings just by eating. Like, that was magical, like, to remember to feed yourself and that halt. Mm-hmm. And for me, it was like, I think I was, I also struggle with food, right? So I would try to not eat, then have cocktails, right? Because liquid doesn't count. So for me, I also have that sort of thrown into this whole mix. Mm-hmm. And just kind of like being on a normal feeding schedule, I was shocked that made such a big impact. Mm-hmm. And could really put any type of, for me, craving at bay. I allowed myself to eat whatever I wanted, but definitely it was incredible how a sandwich could change your day. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you mentioned HALT. Just for anybody that doesn't know, that's just an acronym that we use, like a quick checklist. If you're having a craving, it's hungry, angry, lonely, tired. I'm almost always at least 2 of those things, but that's a great place to start, right? If you're uncomfortable, feeling bad, having a craving, like start with that checklist and start handling those issues and then see how you feel in 15 or 20 minutes.
I experienced the sleep. I was in bed and I was laying there and I could actually feel the sheets on my face. And I was like, oh my God, I can feel the sheets. Like I like my sheets. And I was laying in bed.
Wait, could you not feel them before?
No, because I was blotto.
Oh, a sensory
Like I never
thing.
went to bed like a normal
Yeah.
person.
No, that's what I always say. Like I didn't fall asleep. I passed out. That's a very different experience. Yeah, I see what you're saying. It's like having that awareness. I remember having that awareness, like being outside, and all of a sudden I would notice like all these random weird nature things, like what the birds are doing and all this weird shit that I feel like was just turned off for me my whole drinking life. Like I had none of that sensory stuff. And I'm sure that's definitely an alcohol thing, right? Like it's a natural anesthetic. So it makes perfect sense when you think about it. But yeah, I get that 100%. You do just start noticing things that you've never been aware of before.
Colors were brighter, much to your nature example. Music, I was just grooving. It sounded better. It's just weird. It was really nice though to eventually settle into some sleep. I had a rough go at the beginning. I did it myself. It's not recommended. I didn't realize that. I don't recommend it for anyone else. It was a struggle in those beginning days and weeks. Like your body, you have to give it time to really settle into that.
Sure,
so
yeah.
It was also nice to get sleep back. But yeah, those are just more like the things that you're like, you're going about your day and all of a sudden you're like, oh, I didn't notice that. That's different.
Yeah. One of the things I've realized about getting sober is that comfort matters more than I ever understood before. When I was drinking, I spent years uncomfortable in my own skin, uncomfortable in my emotions, uncomfortable sitting still, relaxing, slowing down. And honestly, I think that's part of why so many of us drink. We're trying to escape discomfort. Now that I'm sober, I pay a lot more attention to the things that genuinely make my nervous system feel calm and safe and relaxed. And y'all know I'm obsessed with Cozy Earth. I already live in their sheets and pajamas, but I just ordered their new brushed bamboo jogger set. And I am ridiculously excited for it to get here because it looks like exactly the kind of outfit I will wear nonstop. Like coffee in the morning, working on the couch, running errands, travel day, evening walk, airport outfit, Saturday reset day, all of it. I love having clothes that feel put together, but still feel like I'm wearing pajamas. That is honestly my ideal lifestyle at this point. I want softness. I want comfort. I want things that make life feel easier. And I ordered the Lake House clogs too, because apparently we are entering my cozy auntie era, which honestly feels deserved. Also, one thing I appreciate about Cozy Earth is they genuinely stand behind their products. They have a 30-day return policy, a lifetime warranty on clothing, and hassle-free returns if something isn't right. So if you've been wanting to try them, Memorial Day is the time. This Memorial Day, give yourself the kind of comfort that lives with you all day, not just the moment you get home. Cozy Earth's brushed bamboo jogger set and Lake House clogs are designed to keep you cozy, comfortable, and actually relaxed all season long. Comfort lives here. Head to CozyEarth.com and use my code Angela for up to 30% off, but only for a limited time. This exclusive offer runs from May 18th to June 1st only, so don't wait. That's code Angela at CozyEarth.com for up to 30% off. And if you see a post-purchase survey, mention that you heard about Cozy Earth right here on Addiction Unlimited. How did you feel like when you started doing groups? Like you started with those 30-day groups and then you ended up with me in VIP. Just for anybody listening, VIP now is only for people that have gone through my 6-week program. But years ago, I had it open where people could come in, could join. And it was one night of group coaching with me every single week. And that's when Denise came in. So when you started really being around all the other sober people, and you said, like, you've told me this before, that like, you were like, I had questions. I wanted your answers to my questions. And I came every week with questions to ask you. And I wanted to know what was going on. What changed for you in sobriety being surrounded by all of us? And we do have a phenomenal group, and I understand I'm biased, but we really do have a phenomenal group of people that are so fun and vibrant and just amazing. So it is a lot of fun. But for you coming in, how did that change your journey or your sobriety?
It was very good to hear other people share how they navigated their day, problems, situations that I might not have been going through, which means it wasn't on my question and answer list for you.
Mm-hmm.
But I got to hear everybody else and what they were going through, and then you got to hear the advice that you give them.
Mm-hmm.
It was, and just to watch other people cry, like, you know, I'm just like, oh my God. And that's vulnerability. Like, I struggle with that immensely. And I'm going to work on that. That's one of my things to work on. I don't ask for help. I don't, fiercely independent, hyper vigilant, like, but it was super important to listen to all that, and you watch people struggle and you celebrate their wins. Mm-hmm. And it's an incredible experience. I mean, I remember being on a meeting and one of our members said, they got to go to their grandson's baseball game, and they never would have been able to do that drinking, and to hear that's like, okay, there's hope. Mm. Like, you can get that far. Like, there's hope for me, because, but it was super important to listen to everybody else's stories. And it's hard because, like, we're detoxing. I mean, I'm not going to say, it was hard in the beginning, because really it's all me. Mm-hmm. So it sort of was like, okay, I got to listen to all these other people before I get to ask my questions, but it also was important for me to listen. And I didn't realize you really are listening and taking in. Mm-hmm. But it is important to hear that. And you will identify with some stuff, and other things, it's their experience. I'm a single gal hanging out by the Jersey Shore. I'm not going to have different problems than somebody with 2 kids, a wife, a husband, a girlfriend, a boyfriend, mm-hmm. or whatever. That adds different spices mm-hmm. to life.
I think, though, a lot of our feelings are always the same, though, because I feel like this is one of the ways people separate themselves when they go to meetings of any sort, is they're sitting there looking for all the ways they don't fit, because that's what your brain wants, right? Your brain wants to tell you that you don't have to go to the meetings and that you don't fit there and you're not as bad as those people, right? That's what your brain wants you to believe, because that way it can keep you isolated and alone and feeling bad about yourself and drunk. So it wants you to sit there and pick all the ways that you don't fit and you're different and this isn't the place for you. But the truth is, we're all really similar. It's just our details that are different, right? And listen, you can be married, you can be 20 years older than me, you can be 20 years younger than me, you can be a multimillionaire, and I can be broke as a joke. Like, whatever the things are, regardless of how different our details are, our feelings are almost always the same. How we perceive the world, respond to the world, and that's what you collect in those meetings, listening to other people. Insights sometimes that you don't even know you need yet, right? Like, I can't believe how many times in early sobriety I would hear people talk about something, and like a week or 2 weeks later, I'd be in a similar situation. And I'm like, damn, that's what he was just talking about in the meeting. Like, I didn't know when I was sitting there I was going to need that information, but here I am. Like, there's so much value in that.
I think a lot of our problems, like, we just have trouble playing with others, and that's how I view myself, mm-hmm. right? I was kind, I was charitable, I cared. I just had all these relationships that were just horrific. And as it turned out, it was me. It was my attitude. It was how I responded. It was opening my mouth when I shouldn't. these are still things that I work on. But for me, I think you're right. We can parse it all the way down to we just have difficulty with others and get that emotional piece is very similar. I would agree with
Well,
that.
yeah, you're talking about a lot of people with a lot of trauma. And I definitely have some people that will say to me, like, I don't think I have a lot of trauma. I had a really great upbringing. I have great parents. But I got to be honest, I don't think that you can be a human being on planet Earth and not have some trauma, right? Of some sort, whether it was being bullied in school or, I mean, it could be millions of things. The life experience is kind of traumatic. So you're talking about a ton of people with a lot of trauma, and that creates trust issues, and that creates the hyper independence and not asking for help and not feeling safe asking for help and all of that stuff. So yeah, I think that's right on. It's just, we have relational struggles for sure. But that's one of the things that groups is so good for too, because it helps you break down those barriers, because a lot of that, I mean, it is internal. We build that up ourselves, and you have to start to feel some safety in some space to start letting that wall down the tiniest bit. And I think when you sit in groups, especially with people with some longer sobriety, and you get to hear other people get vulnerable, it makes you a little braver, right? And you're like, well, damn, if they could talk about that out loud and say that and cry in the middle of the room with all these people, then I can share some shit about me too. And it's okay. We're all going to be okay.
I have watched more grown men cry in AA than I have in my entire lifetime out in society or even in my own house.
Yeah, for sure.
I watched a young lady sit in a room of people and discuss something horrific that happened to her as a teenager. And you can't help but sit there in awe and say, how brave is that person?
Yes.
And I used to say, I hope one day I can be that brave.
Yes.
And I got there.
Yeah.
I got there. It takes me a little bit longer than most, which is why you're still my coach and my friend. But yeah, it's always a work in progress.
Always. Yes. The work is never done. People want this magical checklist that they just go through the actions and check it off the list and then live happily ever after. I'm like, no, I'm going to be a full-time job for the rest of my days. You're always growing and evolving, and life is always happening. You're always learning new things, and you're always getting knocked down. So you're always going to be working on stuff. Speaking of,
I didn't know that.
Speaking of working on stuff, what are some of your routines, tools that are super important to you now? Like, what are some of your greatest mindset shifts that you've had?
I start my morning with 24 hours a day. It's a beautiful little book. I get a thought, a meditation, and a prayer. I stretch on my yoga mat. My hips are tight. I bought a pole, like a stretching pole, a yoga pole, to try to work on like twisting and bending. I feel better when I'm looser. I also have the red light that you suggested. So I like to do red light as well. I do have a Peloton bike that I should get on more often than not. Exercise is hugely important to me. Yeah. And I haven't really been doing it for myself. And I know that. I've always been athletic. I loved kickboxing. I love those workouts where like you can't breathe. I can get into such a zen state through a very difficult workout. That's super important. Movement, going for a walk, getting outside in the sun is huge for me. And I am a water person. My entire day can reset if I'm able to jump into a salty body of water, which I can't always do. So then I do have a bath, and I buy sea salts, and I do like a mixture, and I will sit and soak in a magnesium salt bath. Groups definitely. I just bought a weighted blanket. I have two now. I have the Cozy Earth one, which is phenomenal, and I also bought a Nuzzy, which is like loop stitched. So if you have difficulty with heat problems in the body, it's phenomenal. So anything weighted is super helpful for me.
Yeah, I love all those things too. So what's different about your life now when you look at 5 years ago compared to today?
I have taken control of my finances and become an investor. And I was historically told that I was bad at math. So that was a pretty big hang up for me. I struggled in that area, so I thought I couldn't manage or do anything with money. So I was able to do that. Emotionally, I am much better at my relationships in my job. I had a rough start at the work job that I'm in now, and I really was able to turn that around and get it together and repair some relationships there. I'm able to keep my mouth shut during meetings because not everybody needs to hear what I have to say. I don't always have to remind my boss that I'm smarter than her because that doesn't always go over well. So I'm really proud of what I have done with my mouth and just sitting back and watching things unfold. I strategically tried to work on this year specifically, and it wasn't perfect, but I am very happy with how it rolled out. And I would say I never regretted keeping my mouth shut. It always worked out. It did. And that is a really nice reinforcer to say, you know what, it can work out with your mouth shut. That was major. Knowing more about myself. As a drinker, I used to go to football games. If you've ever been in Jersey, that can be a pretty crazy place to go. I'm not really interested in football. I only went to drink. I am a concert person. I would probably go with my Addiction Unlimited friends, or I would choose differently. We were big tailgaters. There is no reason. Here's the best. There's no reason for me to get to a concert 4 hours early anymore.
I can relate. I used to do it at baseball games. I used to, how many times did I show up for a baseball game and I never even went inside? Wasted, get up the next day, didn't even know if they won or not.
Baseball was so boring. I had an amazing time out in Kansas City. We went to that game and it was really nice to sit with y'all. I mean, you like baseball and I like baseball, and I didn't realize I really like baseball now. It was just a long game.
But when you're sitting by somebody like me that just is such a nerd, and I just nerd out on all the little nuances of baseball, I just genuinely love baseball, so it makes it more fun.
Yeah, I mean, I played softball my whole life, and it was a big part of my childhood, and I do love the game, and it's an American pastime. I love it. I live near the Yankees. Come on. But it definitely, you learn things. I'm into yoga. I hated yoga as a drinker. It made me feel uncomfortable. It actually made my body feel uncomfortable because I probably was swollen and couldn't bend, and then if I bent down, I get indigestion up my chest. Yoga.
And it's too calm. I think a lot of things, especially drinking, I couldn't do a lot of calm things.
That's a good point. And I would say most of my activities now are calm. I have a drum that I like to play. I'll just try to keep the beat with music for fun. I just bought a tarot deck. I've always been really big into astrology, and I was like, oh, it's time. I can hang out and go through my deck. It's just, you just learn so much more about yourself. I have so much more attention to research things, read things, learn about things, look into potentially going back to school. It's just your whole world. You evolve into this new person. It doesn't happen overnight, and I have to go and experience things for the evolution to happen. The evolution doesn't happen sitting on your couch at home. It happens as you do things, and I had to learn, wow, I don't really like this anymore. Or I would rather hang out with these yoga people on a Saturday, and and do the women's event. You know, you have to do those things to figure all this out.
Mm-hmm. And drinking makes us so lazy, you know, because you can go places you don't really like and you just drink until you don't care. You can hang out with people you don't really like and you just drink till you don't care, right? So you don't like, you can do anything, go anywhere, and you just drink till you don't care. So you have no idea what you actually like to do, you know, or how you like to spend your time. But it's fun. Like, I think it's fun figuring that stuff out. I think a lot of people stress out about it. But I'm like you, for a long time, like I would have thought I was an extrovert, right? And then I realized I was never an extrovert. I was just drunk. Like, that's a very different thing. And once you learn like what spaces you're comfortable in and what activities really turn you on, then it's so much easier to create that life that you just love. You know, now I don't do anything that I don't love. But when I got sober, the only thing I loved was drinking, you know, and my dogs. But that was it. Like, I had never really explored anything because drinking just holds you hostage.
Yeah. And I can't wake up and do activities if I'm hungover.
Yeah.
You know, it's just consuming.
Yeah, for sure. Okay. Final question, favorite question. What's your favorite thing about being a sober person?
Being gifted the tools to deal with life as an adult.
Yeah, I get that for sure. That was the thing that was so embarrassing to me in my active alcoholism. I was never embarrassed about being an alcoholic, but I was so humiliated that I just couldn't cope with my life. I was like, what is wrong with me? Like, I just can't cope with anything. I have to just get drunk over everything.
Everything required a drink. And then you woke up to that same issue the next day.
Yeah.
And it's freeing.
Mm-hmm.
I know I have the tools. I know I have a group to go to. I have a wonderful expert on Thursdays, you know, that I can ask a question to. It is extremely freeing to just be.
To just be. So good. Denise, thank you for coming on and doing this with me and sharing your story with everybody.
I loved it. I hope I said some things that were helpful to the audience. I think that's probably the biggest fear of people coming on here, that I say something that helps somebody.
Yeah. I mean, that's what it's all about. You know, I'm huge on service and what can I give rather than what can I get. So it is, I just know your story is really good and powerful, and you've had such an incredible transformation. And there are so many details of your story that I think so many people listening to this right now are nodding along like, yes, me too. Yes, me too. I felt that way too. I understand that. I did that too. And that's the most important part. You know, it's like people have to understand that it doesn't matter where you're starting from. We can all do this. You know, if you're wondering if you can get sober and stay sober, like 1000%, yes, you can. Yes, you definitely can.
I don't think I drank the most out of anybody I've heard. I don't know, but I'm definitely up there. And I was topping off at, you know, a handle. We call them handles here. It was a handle about every 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it.
You can do it. That's exactly right.
It's not easy, but you can do it.
But it's also not as hard as people think either.
No, I don't mean it like, I mean, it's, you have to get over that rough patch. And that's where I feel like people get stuck. Like you have to get over that. And then you feel different. Like it just changes. And I don't know how else to describe it. There isn't a set of days. Yeah. You just have to ride this out, and then it flips a little bit. And then each time you get an experience under your belt that you're successful in, you build that confidence up. And then you're ready for the next thing.
Building your sober muscle.
That's how this goes.
Yeah. And it is one little thing at a time.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you.
If this conversation with Denise felt a little too familiar, right? If you're exhausted trying to control your drinking and you know you're done screwing around with this, book a call with me. Not because you need more information, not because you need another podcast episode, but because you're ready to actually change your life. We'll talk honestly about where you are, what's keeping you stuck, and what support looks like if you're truly ready to do this work. You can book a call directly at addictionunlimited.com/call. That link is always in the show notes, addictionunlimited.com/call. If you're ready, I'm ready, and we can get started literally immediately. addictionunlimited.com/call. I hope you loved this conversation with Denise. Such a beautiful story. She's got powerful, powerful recovery, and she continues to show up and do the work. I'm super proud of her. I hope you're having a fantastic day, and I will see you next week.
You've reached the end of another great episode of the Addiction Unlimited podcast. Candid and honest conversation about addiction and recovery. Be sure to visit us at addictionunlimited.com to join the conversation and access show notes and links to everything we talked about. Love this episode? Please take 30 seconds to subscribe, rate, and review on iTunes to help us improve and give you the information you want. Thanks for listening. See you next week.